You know what I mean? And those are easier things to navigate because it becomes what the real meaning of honor is.
Yeah.
You know?
The thing about men being competitive with each other, that's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. Not enjoying your friend's success, not wanting them to succeed, like secretly wanting them to fail. You will never live a happy life if you're secretly wanting people to fail.
Yeah.
You will never live a happy life if you want to seek, if you seek joy in other people's failure. You will never live a happy life. That is not the way. The way is if someone is doing really well and you feel jealousy, what is that? What is that feeling? That you're comparing yourself to them. Well, you have two choices. You can either be bitter and upset and negative, which does you no good,
Right.
or you can be inspired.
Yeah.
So their success can be fuel that makes you work harder.
Absolutely.
And actually, you should thank them for that.
Yeah.
You should even thank people you don't like if you find their success to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, fuck that dude. No.
Right. Yeah.
That's not the way. The way is, what is he doing?
Absolutely.
Oh, he's working harder.
Yeah.
He's doing this. He's figured out this. He's more objective. He's more analytical. He's figured out a way to work harder.
Absolutely.
He's figured out a way to work smarter.
Yeah.
He's more honest with himself about stuff. He writes things down. He's got a chart on his wall where he figures out what he's doing wrong and how to correct it. And he's doing that work and he's correcting it. I'm not doing that. That's why he's getting ahead and I'm not.
Absolutely.
Okay. But you got to be vulnerable even with yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the super unlock, right?
Yeah.
That's what I got out of journaling. Like that journaling was like, you know, when I sat down and first started journaling, my one task to myself was you have to be brutally honest. And you have to be, and it's not gonna be pretty. But you gotta be brutally honest. Only sit down and journal when you're ready to be brutally honest. And that was a game changer for me. Like I remember there was a guy, he was in the cell next to me, and we got into this minor conflicts. He owed me for some cigarettes that, you know, he got on credit, he didn't pay it. And when I wouldn't give him more on credit, he blew the power out of my cell. So he stuck some shit in the fucking light socket, right? And I'm over here, I'm already, because I had went to the yard that day to the cages, right? So we go out. And normally I don't really go out in the wintertime, you know, this in solitary, so I might go like a month, like during February, it's brutally cold in Michigan. But I get up and I go out, I hadn't been out, you know, I think most of January I probably hadn't been out. And so I go out to the cages, and this one guy, he gets into it with the officers, you know, they're having a little verbal, you know, altercation, and the officers take it out on all of us. So we're only supposed to be out for an hour. So that hour, in my mind, already programmed for, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna do my walking for about 15, and I'm push ups, you know, whatever, keep myself warm, etc. They left us out there, had to be for an hour 45, way beyond what we were supposed to be, right?
Just to keep you cold.
Yeah, just to keep us cold. I mean, like and it's like, I mean, by the time I come in, I'm so cold, I'm past the shivering point. And so I'm pissed. I'm pissed. And then the neighbor's like, yo, can I borrow some more cigarettes? He ain't paid me back. And I'm like, I cuss him out, man. No, you ain't getting no more cigarettes. Joe, I'm over here steaming, bro. I'm enraged, but I'm super cold and like the power is out. So, because the power is, I had like a little radio, I can like block out some of the noise so I can read and write, you know? And sometimes they'll come fix it in a couple hours, but sometimes it can be days, you know? And so by the time I thaw out, I'm like, I had just started this journaling journey, you know? And I just started writing down. I catch this motherfucker in the yard. I'm gonna shank him, and he, you know, I'm furious, you know? And I come back a couple of days later, because that's what I would do. I would write, and then I would come back and read what I had written. And I was like, this is the mind of a madman. Like this person, like I would not want this to be a person that I live next door to.
Right.
So you got to get your shit together, you know?
Yeah.
And so I wrote through this process, and, you know, even now, you know, I still have all my journals. They're actually on a pad similar to that, like that notepad. I still have all my journals from prison. And I can go and flip through the pages, and it's like, you know, one thing I didn't do enough of, I wish, and I would encourage people who journal, is write the dates on everything, because I didn't write all the time. I didn't write the dates. But I can go back, man, and I flip through, and sometimes it's beautiful. You know, sometimes it's these moments where I can see myself awakening, you know, and I see this desire to be a different person. And I see just the honesty there, you know, of like, listen, I'm not there yet. You know, I feel it. You know, I'm afraid that, you know, what if I become nice? Can I survive the yard now? What does that mean? You know, to like not be angry. Angry is a power in prison. You know, it's a nobody wants to mess with an angry person in prison or a crazy person. So these things they have value. You know, who am I without my anger? You know, and so I can see this enlightenment in real time, and I'm just like, man, you were really a kid. You know, it's like you're trying to figure this stuff out with no, you know, there's no therapist, there's no, you know, you don't have anybody to interpret. You don't even have language for this. You just know you're hurting, and you know that that's the anger is really hurt. You know, it's really disappointment. It's all these things, and that writing it down, like I highly encourage people to like really. It's one of the things that I attribute to my success today. All the things that I want to manifest in my life, I have written down. I've literally written them down. I mean, now we got technology. I'm constantly writing things down on my phone when I don't have access to pen and pad. But there's something powerful about like handwriting, like just the meditative process of seeing one word after another. But it starts with that. You got to get real with yourself, you know. And you know, for me, it was so hard because early on, I blamed everybody. You know, I blamed my dad. You know, I blamed my mom. Like, why would you hit me out of anger? You know, blame my dad. Why would you let her do that? You know, what has led to that journaling led to me having powerful relationships with my parents because it taught me how to be vulnerable. And it taught me how to talk to them without judging them, you know, and to really spend time with them and say, you know, I remember my mother, we had a dust up, you know, because she was upset by something I had written. And she said to me, you know, you don't know what my life was like back then. And she said it multiple times, and I just listened to her. And I said to her, I was like, Mom, how would I have had understood your life when I was 9 years old? And it just stopped her, you know? And it allowed us to actually talk about who she was and what she had went through. And it allowed me to forgive her, you know, because that was a tough thing that I had to navigate was forgiveness. And that's another thing that I found in life, man, is that people hang on to stuff. You know, they let it torture them. You know, meanwhile, the other person is off living their life and they're not even thinking about that thing that you're harping over, you know. But I wouldn't have been able to get there without journaling. You know, I wouldn't have been able to get there without saying, I'm actually not angry today. I'm hurt. You know, I used to like have these moments where this is an extremely vulnerable thing to say, but it's important. Mail call in prison is one of the most emotionally charged times that you will ever serve. Because it's that moment of a day where everything gets quiet and everybody who's in the cell block is waiting to either get excited or get disappointed. And if you're lucky that someone thought about you and they've sent you a letter or they've sent you $20, you know, $30 or whatever, and it induces so much anxiety when you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting to hear from someone. And I just remember like writing in my journal, you know, I would go these stretches, man, and I wouldn't hear from my family. You know, I would write these long letters and I wouldn't get a letter back. I was going through, you know, a time where I felt extremely vulnerable because of the assault on the officer and was worried about like my actual well-being, you know, to the point where I started fasting like 3 days a month. I would like not eat anything. I would just drink water and I would just like eat cough drops that I could buy out of the commissary. That was the only thing that you can buy that was like digestible other than medicine when you're solitary. So you can't get noodles and all the things. And so we would buy cough drops and eat those like Jolly Ranchers. You know, that was like our little thing. And I just would like, I just remember like writing and just being like, man, I just want to hear from somebody, you know, because these people, like, they can do anything to me. Like I've hurt one of their colleagues, you know, and they were telling me, they would, you know, tell me, yo, we're going to come in and fuck you up, or we're going to, you know. And when you're going through that, you know that there's things that they can do, like they can deprive you of food. They have this concoction in there. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but it's called food loaf. And basically what happens is, say they pass out the meal and you decide, I'm not going to give the milk carton back. Then they can put you on food loaf restriction. And so instead of getting a regular tray, they give you this loaf of everything that you would have had that day that's packed into this brick that they bake. And so just imagine them just grinding all your food up, you know, your mashed potatoes and chicken patty and string beans, and then baking it into a little brick. And then being like, okay, that's your meal for the day. Now that's what the meal is supposed to be, but what actually happens is they take all the leftover food from that week. We cook that with oatmeal and Jell-O so it actually stays together, and they bake it into these bricks. And they put it into the freezer, and then when somebody's on food loaf, they'll send over to the child hall, we got one on food loaf. And they'll take that brick out, warm it up in the oven, and then send it over to the cell block. And you can't eat it. It smells so atrocious. It is the most gross thing, but it meets their minimum requirement of what they have to do in terms of nurturing. So in terms of nourishment, so what I would do is like 3 days, I would just fast, and I would just drink water, and I would, you know, use my cough drops. And I was doing that because I was preparing myself for if they just decided to make up a lie and be like, oh, he didn't give us back the card, or he threw some food on us, and then I'm physically conditioned to go without food and not suffer, right? And then I realized that when I started to do it, that it actually had these spiritual and these psychological effects that were like benefits I didn't know I needed or was looking for. But one, really was the roots of helping me understand what it means to be resilient and what it means to be capable of overcoming a thing. And then it also just helped me self-regulate and know that I can be in control of how I feel about anything. And so the first time I did it, I felt like I was suffering. You know, I was like, oh, this is hard. This is, you know, this system is forcing me to have to, you know, figure out how to be tough and all the things. But by the time I started to do it, I started to feel like, you know, gratitude, and I started to feel like this honoring of myself, you know, that I'm willing to fight for myself, you know. But all of that came out of being, you know, raw in those journals and just being like, man, I didn't get any mail today, but that hurts. You know what I mean? It's sad. I don't feel thought about, you know. I went 17 years without my mother coming to visit me. And that psychologically had so much impact on how I saw myself. Of like, your own mother won't come see you. Like, you're that bad of a person, you know? And so that journaling really helped me undo a lot of that damage. You know, it helped me to start to see myself. It's like, no, you actually are lovable. Like, you are worthy of good things happening to you. You know, there's a lot of bad things that happen to you, but those all weren't a reflection of your self-worth. And so when I got out, you know, it helped me have these deeper conversations with my parents, and it really helped me understand like what true forgiveness is. You know, there was a time where I had forgave my mother, but it came with attachments. You know, I forgive you, but you got to be this now. You know, you got to nurture me, and you got to, you know, take me and, you know, hug me in your bosom like any other parent would do their child. And it was all contrived in my head. You know, that wasn't forgiveness. That was like this condition, right? You know, and I see that in work. I see it in life. I see it in relationships and parenting, is that we're always attaching a thing to the outcome as opposed to
transactional.
Yeah, you know, as opposed to just saying, you know what, I forgive you, and that's it. It has to be nothing else. Like, you don't have to change. We don't even have to like each other. But I'm not going to hold myself hostage to the pain of the past. Like, that's when I think about, grit, and I think about sports, and I watch these athletes who compete. They're putting their bodies on the line, and sometimes you can see a person have an injury, and you like that person's career over because they don't have the mental toughness to like overcome that adversity. And you'll see them quitting in a moment, and then you'll see the other ones that they'll have that injury, and the moment they get out of the hospital, they're working. They're working. They're going to work themselves back to whatever they need to do to compete again. And like that's all of that is that vulnerability and ability to like accept a thing and then decide what you want to do with it.
Well, I think those lessons that you get from athletes is one of the reasons why we love sports so much.
Absolutely.
So we see ourselves in these athletes and see their struggles and their triumphs, and we say, oh, I think if I work hard, I can do that too, or I could do something similar in my own life.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people are going to get that out of this conversation too, from you. What you've gone through and who you are now is very admirable. It really, the way you express yourself, the way you can talk about these ideas, and the way you're so vulnerable to just talk about what you went through. It's an insane journey, And I really appreciate you coming on here, man.
No, I appreciate you having me, man. It's such a big fan, and just so much respect for, the way that what I really respect out of you more than anything else is your curiosity. I find that super fascinating that you can be doing anything you want to do in the world, but you remain like super curious about life, and that's like such an admirable trait and one that I truly appreciate.
But I think we all have that. I think it's just not nourished. I think everyone's curious, and I'm very curious about people. Very curious about what makes a person who they are. What did you go through? How do you think? How do you go through your day? Like what is your thought process? You can learn a lot from people, man. And I learned a lot from you.
Likewise.
So, thank you very much, brother.
Thanks so much for having me, man.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right.